Big Grumpy Entrepreneur here, and it's been a long week. Lots of good stuff going on. If anyone's interested, take a look at crowdstacker.com. We've got a big announcement coming out this Monday, being led by the Telegraph, and I've spent most of the week talking to various members of the press about what we're doing. So a really common question I've been asked in general, but certainly in the last couple of weeks, is what's going to go on with crowdfunding in general, here in the UK especially, not so much the US stuff. Let's start with equity, right? So forgetting the perception of all the companies out there, like most of them aren't actually making any money. In fact, I would say probably most of them are using shareholder funds just to try and get market grab. And if you actually look at the performance of them, well, they're not relatively bad, but out of 300 companies, there's been like 2 exits in one case of a big provider out there, and another one they've had 0 exits out of like 280 companies or something. We say we're going to challenge the VC world with crowdfunding, but if that was a VC company with 300 companies and they'd only had 2 exits, I don't think that business would be doing particularly well. So there's a lot of stuff out there, a lot of news, a lot of noise, should we say, that is not necessarily ringing true. Also as well, I think there's going to be a big uproar at some point in the UK with companies not delivering. We're already starting to see lots of news about these companies where they've had disqualified directors, and the numbers that were produced on the business plan weren't actually the real numbers. So expect to see that happen even more. And as I always keep saying to people, I know I sound like a broken record, but as soon as you're dealing with consumers, it becomes very public, and you have to be really careful what you do. And then we have the peer-to-peer space. Obviously some big news in the US this week about Lending Club. I said to a journalist yesterday, it's not, what's going to come out of the woodwork on that one won't be any different to maybe a few other companies out there. So this second company running the loan book, and co-founder CEOs being pushed off businesses by a board of VCs or Wall Street guys, is not going to be is not uncommon, and isn't going to be some of the news that comes out will probably stick for a few other businesses out there. Peer-to-peer has been an interesting one because it kind of gets a bit of a hard time in the press here in the UK. There's a lot of people out there who I don't think are necessarily correct, and their track record wouldn't show they particularly are, who kind of have a bit of an issue with the smaller players in the space. Ironically, some of the smaller players are actually getting more land grab than some of the big guys. But the news on the street around peer-to-peer is that there's a lot of companies in the UK in trouble. Again, they're a bit like equity. They're all struggling to get actual money from the crowd. To get, it's kind of private equity cash, and it's not really getting money from the crowd. And they're struggling to make cash on deals, and just liquidity in general. So, I think by the end of 2016 in the UK, there's definitely going to be at least 10 to 15 P2P players in the UK that will have gone by the wayside. And in general, for me, around crowdfunding at the moment, I think it's really early adoption market. I think it's very similar to the e-commerce market back in 1999-2000. Consumers are still trying to find their ground, they're still getting educated and educating themselves. And we're in our early days stage, and it'll look very different in a few years. What is becoming really quite obvious about the space is that there will be a lot of companies that will fail. There will be a lot of companies that will, I think, join up in partnership. One of the things we're announcing at Crowdstacker is white labeling the platform for other companies, but also looking to have various businesses kind of come onto the platform and not have the barriers that they might have at the moment associated with doing things on their own. The FCA hopefully will tighten up on some stuff. I think the FCA do a great job, but there's kind of a little bit of concern that actually they kind of pick on the wrong guys, the easy targets, and they should be looking at a lot of stuff that's going on out there, which I hear about. So if I hear about it, I'm pretty sure that they must hear about it. But in general, crowdfunding is obviously here to stay. It works for some people. There's some great examples out there. There's some not so great examples. I think that will hopefully change a little bit. And as a consumer right now, while interest rates are low in the UK, peer-to-peer, good way of making some actual money for once. What will happen when interest rates go up? I'm sure that whole peer-to-peer space is going to get super challenged. But you know, on the equity side, you know, business plans these days, if you haven't got a crowdfunding campaign in there as at least an option, then you're kind of like not with the current situation. So yeah, really good. And I'm trying to be positive about the space. I know there's some other press out there where I'm quite negative about it, so I'm trying to have a positive head on it at the moment. But I also have a reality that you know, all is not great in the PR world of crowdfunding. Anyway, I'm heading to London, and it's Friday, so it's the weekend, so it's been a long week. Have a good weekend. Cheers.